Concerns have been expressed about the slow pace of VAT refunds. We recognize that it has hurt the cash flow of a number of companies, including small and medium enterprises. The acting SARS Commissioner has committed to processing the outstanding VAT refunds as quickly as possible. We estimate total additional refunds of 20 billion rand, made up of 11 billion rand to clear the backlog and an upward revision of 9 billion rand for the current fiscal year.
What a staggering shortfall, 27 billion. Bad news then for small businesses who already wait too long to get paid. Can they survive? South Africans watching the Nugent Commission will know that SARS is in a deep crisis. It's estimated then as well that SMMEs contribute over 30% to the country's GDP and is responsible for almost 60% of the workforce. So we need them. We're joined by Xolani Qubeka, the chair of the Small Business Development Institute. We also have entrepreneur Tebogo Ditshego, the CEO of Ditshego Media. Welcome, both of you.
Thanks for inviting me.
When you heard that today, what did you think? Is there any future for small businesses here?
Well, firstly, I thought that he's telling the truth because as an owner of a small business, I did receive the VAT refunds on time. Ooh. But I'm not necessarily only looking for VAT refunds. We want to see what are the incentives that small businesses will get. Now, you just spoke about an important stat. 60% of the workforce is from small and medium-sized businesses. Now, if you go to a country like Austria, which has an unemployment rate of around 3.6%, over 90% of their jobs are created by small and medium-sized businesses. And so we need to increase that. We also need to look at other countries. Look at South Korea. South Korea has a youth unemployment rate of 9.8%. South Korea is a developed economy. In the 1950s, it was one of the 5th poorest countries in the world. Now they see a 9.8% youth unemployment rate as a crisis. And what have they done?
It is.
Which it is. Well, in South Africa, it's 38.2%. Now, what they've done in South Korea is early in the year, they announced plans to spend 52 billion rands over the next 3 years to incentivize small businesses. Now, let's put that into perspective. They will be giving grants to small businesses for every single employee that they hire. They will be removing corporate and individual taxes from youth-owned small businesses. Now, they're looking to decrease it from 9.8% to under 8% by 2021. And those are the kinds of measures that we want to see in South Africa. Over and above that, we want institutions such as the IDC, the NEF, and other financial institutions that assist businesses with funding to remove the red tape.
Okay, so you hit the nail on the head. You've got to invest in these small businesses. You've got to help people get loans. Did you hear anything today that gives you confidence that SMMEs are being taken seriously?
Well, in fact, there's been a very minute mention of SMMEs, and that's the critical problem in this country. SMMEs are almost taken as a stepchild of the economy. We need to change the attitude. If we are saying by 2030, we ought to create at least 11 million jobs, of which 90% of those jobs will come from SMME. Then it means we must do something. Something must crack.
It's a no-brainer.
Exactly. So we need to be able to have a master plan that begin to say, as a country, the future is in SMMEs. Therefore, we need to redirect resources towards SMMEs. We need, in fact, to invest more on local economic development, underpinned by investing in local economies in the townships, in rural areas. But we cannot just do it by simply setting up a Ministry of Small Business Development and not give it resources to enable it, to do what it ought to.
Okay, and where do these resources come from? Because I know that banks are pretty reluctant to give loans to people who are possibly starting a new business or have experienced a failed business.
Look, I think for me we need to change the attitude. If we were to catapult SMMEs from the periphery of the economy to the epicenter, we need to do something different. We need to be able, to turn even the way government operates around. If you look at national government as an example, there are a lot of resources that would better be deployed at the local level, where you need better skills, where you need better driver for the economy. Therefore, we need to be able to invest in local infrastructure, reindustrialize through SMME development, because yes, we're talking about people not being paid on time. It's real. But the fundamental issue, until we change our attitude and say we're going to be small business centric, and therefore, what are the fundamental things we need to do? Because we need to change the entire architecture of the economy, because we're still stuck in that apartheid architecture of large business driven.
So can I just jump in here? I mean, I was talking to a smart colleague of mine who knows everything about the world of finance, and he was telling me that in countries like India, it's encouraged for you to fail. You know, if you haven't failed a couple of times, if you're an entrepreneur, well, then you really haven't cut your teeth. So banks and lenders are more inclined to take a chance on you. I don't think that's happening here, is it?
Not at all. And I just want to give you a shocking statistic. South Africa is spending approximately 29 billion rands collectively on research and development. Our manufacturing sector is 13% to our GDP. Now, if you put that into perspective, compare that 30 billion rand with one South Korean company, Samsung. They've spent in 2016 191 billion rands on research and development.
Wow.
And the manufacturing sector is where there's a hyper inflation in terms of job and a hyper creation of jobs. Now, we need to see that manufacturing sector in South Africa being doubled. But it can't happen if you're not investing in research and development. Another thing is that a lot of these big businesses that make a lot of money, besides the fact that they do not subcontract to small businesses and they are not being incentivized to do so, a lot of these businesses, when they make money, they just hoard on to their cash. They don't reinvest it. And you find a culture in other countries where a big business and a lot of these lenders will give out money to 10 businesses, and as you said, none of them would fail. But the one that succeed will pay for all of the 9 that
I mean, you
fail.
said you were lucky enough to get your tax rebate. A lot of people are not. There's such a horrific weight, and nobody really knows what's behind that. Considering that small businesses struggle most from getting paid, this could stifle you, couldn't it? It could sink you.
No, definitely. We have seen a lot of businesses folding, waiting to be paid. Not just a rebate, but being paid for work done. I mean, there are people who would work even up to 6 months waiting for pay. So we need to be able to deal with the inefficiencies in the system. And let's put entrepreneurs at the center of what we are doing. We need to invest in entrepreneurship. We need to make sure that our systems are small business centric. Now, the challenge is that we treat SMMEs as if being an SMME is a permanent state. There is no developmental trajectory that says in this particular period we want to see large companies, or by 2030, as an example, we want to have developed at least 200 companies in this specific sector. So we need to be able to have this partnership between government and the private sector. And private sector needs to play a much more pivotal role in opening up, I think, their markets through localization and ensuring that we can invest more in developing local talent, local competencies in the manufacturing segment.
That's a very good point, isn't it? I think Cyril Ramaphosa said at the Job Summit that you've got to invest more in South African produce, but do you think he should have pushed it, or Tito should have pushed it a little bit further, not only South African but also small companies? Tie those two together?
Absolutely. So I think that it should have been tied together with the small companies, because that is where the future jobs are going to be. I want to see when the president is meeting people, he's also including small businesses, leaders in small businesses. And I think another thing is looking at the implementation. Now, we have a great legislation, BEE legislation, triple BEE. We've got a lot of transformation that's going on, not only in terms of black people, but in terms of youth and women. Now, these are great legislations, but I'll shock you with a little statistic that it says that state-owned companies are obliged by law to report to the BEE Commission in terms of how they are faring. Now, out of the over 700 state-owned companies, only 4 of them have reported. In terms of the JSE-listed companies, out of over 400, only 121 have reported, which means that there is no commitment to transformation. So what is the point of the law if the law doesn't have teeth and we cannot do anything to punish you if you do not follow the law?
Let's leave it there. Thank you both for speaking to me, Xolani Qubeka and Tebogo Ditshego. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So were our guests correct in their analysis and views? Israel Kize and Janine Rousseau tell us next. Stay with us.